Welcome to episode 21 of the International Web Effectiveness Podcast, where Bill Hunt and I, Bill Scully, focus on the strategies and techniques necessary to improve your web presence and manage your global websites. In our last episode, we talked about Google's Search Off the Record podcast, discussing how they handle duplicate content. In this episode, we're going to dig into the frustration of many search marketers that have no little representation at the C-suite level. We're going to look at why that is and what we can do to elevate search. And I'd also like to extend that to digital, not just search. I think there's lots of ways that people can creatively use websites and other web platforms to help build their brand and improve customer experience. So, Bill, you recently wrote an article in LinkedIn. Actually, you read an article in LinkedIn from Jason Kilgore from FindLaw on why search needs representation. And there he argues Google's recent policy that if your website has received a manual action, your paid ads may be disapproved or even receive an account suspension. I'd like to talk about the article that you wrote and discuss why we really need to have representation in the C-suite level and why all search people and people working on websites need to be connected with the mission and the strategy coming from the brand. How you doing, Bill?
Good. It was good. Had a nice holiday break and was in Japan and enjoying that. Got some rest, some time offline. And then come back to a couple articles that, I was reading about this. I think this one, it started out really as a rant because, as you know, one of my frustrations with search is that in 2025, we still don't get the love we should get. And then, piggybacking on your thought that does extrapolate to digital more broadly as well. And then I started thinking about that and Jason's argument, and he's been talking about this for a while, that search needs more representation at this level. And what do we mean by that? So really at the C level, the CEO, CMO, CFO, ironically, I think we get more attention from the CFO than any other C-level executive out there. And it's typically the CFO that has to deal with the impact of negativity, a negative impact from organic search. And I wrote an article, I think it was now 10, 12 years ago, about talking to your CFO about search. And this was related to, a project where I'd gotten called in because a company was having to report to their shareholders, to their annual report, that they were spending a ton of money that they hadn't expected to drive traffic because their SEO completely tanked. And so the CFO, who now has to go on the earnings call and try to explain why the hell did we spend all this money that we hadn't predicted. And I mean, it took them from a profitable quarter to a less than profitable quarter because they had to spend so much money to backfill. And that was one of the few times that I've really seen C-levels have a discussion about search. And that prompted these Google warning statements. And it's basically saying if Google materially changes, it could negatively affect us where we have to use other means.
So before you go any further, I think it's interesting that they even made that quick decision and realize that they're going to lose revenue if they didn't do ads. There's a lot of companies that don't do ads, search ads. If there was someone doing SEO, they wouldn't be recommending that. But that's
if most of your traffic or all your traffic goes away.
What's that?
If most or all of your traffic goes away and the bulk of your leads actually come from search, then you need to, backfill it somewhere. I think if you're a big enterprise, if you're, IBM or Siemens or any of the other big companies we've worked with, they probably wouldn't even notice. Right? Not immediately. But if you're an e-commerce company, or if you're a company that drives, in this case, I think it was like 70 to 80% of their revenue was coming from organic search. That hurts if that goes away. Like if you get a manual action, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
And your only hope, is to buy that traffic. And so in this case, it was a fairly abrupt, it wasn't a manual action. In the end, it was because and I talk about this in an article I reference in here. The creative director essentially wanted more white space And so they had a 2-row header, and then they had some other really interesting things baked into the page that really helped him from organic search. He wanted more white space to make it look better. So he reduced their heading down to, I think it was 50 character spaces. So they started conjoining names. If you're, I don't know, Tommy Bahama shirts, and you make Tommy Bahama one word, that's one word, not two words.
Right.
And so as a result of this, it really started negatively between the three or four things to get the creative look he wanted. It negatively impacted the organic search. And it was really interesting when the CMO in this case took the side of the creative person, and it does make sense. It's his team member that the aesthetics matter, that we're, a well-known brand. We got to look good. We got to be good. And I don't have time for all this gorpy organic stuff. So in essentially making these changes, he killed the gorpy organic stuff. And now you got to pay to recover that traffic. And that's exactly the scenario that was in the meeting, because while the CMO is jumping in saying, well, this is to the board. So I'm presenting to the board, and who now has to, answer to shareholders why they're now losing money. Then the CTO jumps in and he says same thing, all this change for Google, Google sucks. It's killing our business. They don't care. And, I'm tired of having to chase Google. So we got two C-level executives now that are, basically saying they're tired of dealing with SEO crap in front of the board. And my response to the board was, this is your problem, guys, because search is not thought of strategically. Despite it being 80 to 90% of the traffic that helps you generate revenue, nobody on your executive team really cares about it. And until they care about it, and it's a key part of their KPI, ironically, it should bend for both, then just pay, and then tell Wall Street that you're not going to make a profit until you figure out a way to make. And it wasn't just paid search, but it was like, Facebook ads and other, banners and stuff like that. And taking all these sort of experiences and tying them in to try to get this response, one of the reasons we don't have representation at that level. Now, I'm not saying, well, maybe I am saying it'd be nice to have a chief search officer or a chief digital officer, because I think for many companies, and this is to your point, many companies are now where digital, whether it's digital transformation or digital, whatever it is, digital marketing, digital transformation, digital systems, is so critical that we probably need a chief digital officer, because this is a subset actually of a CTO, which is all the technology bits. And it's a subset on the marketing side, of a form of marketing. It's also got, I think, a little respect or flavor of growth manager, whatever it is. So maybe we need higher level representation. And I'm saying this for a couple of reasons. Now, whether we never end up with a C in front of digital, but at least we can try to get their attention. And that's the way I phrased my article, was not like Jason arguing that we need a seat at the table, we need a C-suite position. We at least need to be part of the discussion. And I think to your, as you were alluding to, the more you're relying on digital, the more you're relying on any type of search or findability. I mean, I'm almost now don't even want to use the word search anymore. I just want to be thinking about how do we get found?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. I mean, the web is a tool. Search is just one way to find us, but there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do, like we were talking about earlier, where you can help customers answer questions via, their path, via picking up a package and scanning a QR code or something else. There's just so many ways on the web that you can support your customers. And I think it's almost like, I feel like a lot of the time SEO is like considered tactical instead of strategic. And, if you take that up another level to search, same thing. But digital should be strategic. And, you can almost make the point where traffic might not be the main KPI, right? Maybe you're trying to get more satisfied customers or help build the brand, etc. What do you think about that?
I think you're definitely spot on. In the article, I gave, I think, 4 or 5 reasons why. we don't have a seat at the table and sort of mind share with these executives is, and that was one of them. I think that was number three, is that, organic search and anything digital. Let's elevate this to replace search and just say digital. I do think it's viewed as tactical. And that's the problem, is especially on the SEO side, where I've been in so many meetings, especially on the Href Lang side. As I was focusing on that, I would be invited to various meetings where I'm there to talk about Href Lang, but I have to listen to them present their monthly or quarterly reports or things. And it's always minutia. It's nothing strategic. It's always tactical, tactic. I think the other thing too is we're not aligned with strategic business goals.
Yeah.
When, especially on the search side, sort of narrow casting search again, I think it's very rare that I've seen any search program have any real alignment to the overall strategic goals of the company. And in their planning and their activities. In the article, I talk of a case where I was brought in by he wasn't a chief, he was the head of web infrastructure, which I think now I need to look, it might actually be a C-level job, but this person reported directly to the CEO. And he brought me in to basically understand how well his search team was performing. And then I was supposed to give my report to him and the CEO. And what was interesting is I went to the annual report and I looked at what their focus was. What did they tell Wall Street they were going to solve for? And one thing was they were going to go after BRIC markets. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, these emerging markets. There wasn't a single search activity around those markets. So apparently it's a big strategic focus to target these markets. There wasn't organic search. They weren't even doing rank checking in these markets. They were building websites for them. There was no paid. So these relatively easy ways to enter the market with paid or to complement any TV advertising, because they were doing TV ads now in a couple of these markets, no corresponding, and really no digital at all, other than some lead generation around email. And I thought that was fascinating. And as I sort of mentioned this in my pre-reads, because as you know, presenting to senior executives, 9,000 people need to sanitize your document. So what's a 500-page report becomes 3 slides on a screen that basically everything is good, the most bestest company in the world. And that's not what they wanted. But when I told them that, they're like, where the hell did you find this out? I'm like, it's right there in your annual report on your focus. And so when I presented that in my readout to the senior executives, they're like, he couldn't believe it that people. And so my question was to the CEO, how did they know? How would they know? And that's when he realized that, this senior level guidance isn't necessarily cascading down.
Yeah.
Because I think a big problem in organizations is, here we got C-level people, specifically CEO, trying to drive shareholder value. And shareholder value is nothing more than increasing the share price or increasing the dividend. Even without an MBA, you know that that's a function of making more money than your costs. That's how it works, right? Because it's a function of earnings, per share. However you get to that number, everybody beneath that level, their job is contributing to one of those two equations, making money or saving money. And I think the further down the food chain we go, the more people are unaware of that their piece connects to something that connects to something that connects to something. Coming back to your point about digital helps multiple people achieve their goals, whether it's the CMO on a marketing side, whether it's the CTO, the COO, everything has some connection to digital in some way.
Yeah. So,
and we forget that.
Let me ask. So, is the C-suite's lack of understanding of search primarily a knowledge gap or a prioritization issue, or they just don't connect it to results?
It's all the above. So in my recommendations, one of the recommendations I made was that we need to radically change how we report. We need to show how we're doing those things, how we're making money, how we're saving money. I mean, a very interesting thing that I've been trying to work on for the past few days is tying this to, again, I mentioned this recruiter that approached me for this M&A job that asked me if I knew about this core program that this company has, and it's really about cost savings. And one of their swim lanes is how do we make customers quicker? How do we get more sales quickly? Or how do we take them through an onboarding process? Or how do we do this? And almost everything that they had on their to-do list, had some sort of corresponding digital transformation or looking at ways to improve the website or their digital performance to sign people to get customers faster or customer satisfaction to help them find parts faster. And I thought that was interesting because now we can work with that, right? Can we on search show how, because we can acquire people faster, maybe we can acquire people further down the journey or the purchase cycle. If we start reporting back on that, at least put labels. And in the article, I actually mentioned an example where a report that we used to do called the Kamea report, which Kamea, publicly we called it the keyword maximization and effectiveness report, but it was nothing more than a revenue generated. It was a simple line item that by market, how much revenue was directly driven from search in both paid search and organic search. And so for the haters, they're going to say, well, Bill, you can't track it at a keyword level. I didn't say we tracked it at a keyword level. We looked at pages and source coming from search. And because we worked with the analytics team and we worked with all the conversion teams to give search some credit, we broke it into two buckets: direct search revenue and search influenced revenue. And we presented a report. And then in this report, the screenshot that I show, we generated by week 23 $1 billion. And that's all we were saying, is that search is responsible for $1 billion of revenue, direct revenue. And then it was responsible for, which is not in there, was like another 3 billion of revenue from search influence revenue, meaning they came from search and then maybe didn't convert, but went into a lead queue where a salesperson converted them. So we just got a share of that conversion. And so the moment we introduced that report, it ended up on a CEO dashboard.
Nice.
Right. And there was another time at IBM where we had presented, I got the opportunity to present where what search was driving. I was the last person to go at like 6:30 in the evening one day on all the quarterly reports. And I just happened to have some really impressive numbers to where the CEO said, we should have that on my dashboard. And so because again, I'm tying things back. And then the other things we tried to tie back was some of the search initiatives, how much money did we save, by, making as we talked about in a previous episode, commonizing, having common templates, having things done without repeating it 90 times. Feed that back. And I think if we can do some of that gets percolated up to the C level, while having the other semi-worthless reports that we generate about ranks and impressions and stuff like that, I think we can do it. And then I think the second thing I recommended was any way we can to demonstrate strategic value. And whatever that may be, showing that make stuff up.
Yeah,
right?
I like that idea a lot. Too many times the search strategy is built on increasing traffic. Well, traffic doesn't pay the bills, and
right.
Traffic doesn't connect to your strategic objectives. And like you were saying, contributing to revenue. I mean, if you were to take a look at something holistically, you would be working in conjunction with the CRO person, or maybe even if you were the digital guy, you would be focusing on CRO first because you already have traffic. Why not get them to convert more? Yeah, I think there's these two levels of we need represent, but we also need to be able to make those changes, and they shouldn't be done in a silo.
That's sort of the case that I make, is we got to earn that representation and awareness. And we do it, there's the 4 or 5 ways that I mentioned in there. But, another one I suggested was securing an executive sponsor. Find one of these C-suite people, figure out how you contributed, a lot of value to them hitting their KPI. and then get them to sing your song in the meetings, right? And maybe it is the CFO, maybe it is the CTO. Who did you benefit the most from this? Did our speeding up the web, because we did all the speed things to get our core web vitals improved, it allowed us to save, I don't know, remember ESPN did that. I mean, they made a statement somewhere that doing a bunch of SEO stuff, fixing scripts and streamlining this and that, and they basically had like a code jam or whatever it is, hackathon internally. They fixed all their scripting and how stuff was called in. It made their website so much more efficient that they were able to say it was saving them like $1 million a month in server overhead,
Wow.
right? And so, because they did some search things, they're able to save money on, their server costs, $1 million a month, 12 million a year on this. And so I think trying to get some of these folks to sing your praise, in there. And I think you can only do that through performance. And again, how did we save money? Did we cut out the journey, the customer journey by N steps, or did we do X, Y, and Z? Another interesting one is that I've leveraged in the past is site search customer satisfaction scores.
Hmm.
Did you improve site search where we now can say we just, because people like good news. Hey, our customer satisfaction score is now 92% for site search.
Right.
Those kind of things I think can help us. And then last thing point I want to make about this I put was leverage risk management. And this is going back to, again, if you've got a Google warning statement, if you've got search is changing and AI answers is, then fine, let's try to leverage that to show how we've put in preventative measures. How did we fix that? How are we trying to get ahead of that? And then, because what's a nice soundbite is while you've got in the risk statement section of the report, we've remediated these risks and we're now sort of embracing AI or answer search results because we now have a person focused on specifically answering questions. So again, I think we've got to earn that position. And the last thing I had goes back to exactly Jason's comment was I really think, and it's still frightening that in 2025, we don't have a better integration between search. And I'm going to use search broadly in that. And there's an article I just put up yesterday where I dusted off some 20-year-old concepts. Well, one is 24 years old about the 4 pillars of search. And then I used an Adobe one, which was the 3 pillars, where how we strategically integrated paid, organic, and site search under a single manager. And so my argument in this recent article was by doing that from a strategic play, it gives us a bigger footprint. There's now 3 pieces that we can take credit for, that we can show output from. There's synergies we can get, like if you've ever tried to get the words, like I was talking to somebody the other day, they're on their 7th month trying to get keywords from their paid agency, trying to get the paid agency, 7 months. And my answer was like, dude, you need to escalate this because they work for you. Just tell them you're going to fire them.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm the search guy and, our advertising people, they like
Google
them.
Decide
And
what the keywords are.
right. That's probably what it is. Let's go all in on PMAX and we don't even know what the words are. But I mean, those are the kind of things. And then same thing with site search, that the insights we can get. And then now as we start to think about answer engines, and I think an upcoming episode, we're going to talk about this idea of, do we need an answer czar or a VP of answers to look at this? And again, not even, myopically from a US perspective, but a global perspective. Are we answering the global set of questions? And then are we having information that ties things together? And I just think that. But at the end of the day, the whole point of this article was trying to answer, the question of why don't we have representation? And then how do we then change that? What are 5 or 6 things that we can do to do it? And I think I'm going to maybe adjust the article a little bit to like you said, open the lens into a broader digital thing. And I just want to sort of close my little mini rant here with this is why I've become so bullish on this idea of web effectiveness
Yeah.
is that I think this is just a subset of a subset of is it all working together collaboratively? Are we, the point we started with is okay, because we've got a penalty because we've done something, Google's kicked us out of organic search, so they're going to kick us out of paid search too. But the idea is how did these things happen? How do we get all the pieces to work together? How do we ensure that our creative team is not making changes that negatively impact something else? How do we make sure that our lead forms are working?
I want to remind people of our free Facebook group where we use that as an opportunity to discuss these things, and you can ask any questions you want. You can also suggest ideas for upcoming podcasts. You can find that by searching International Web Mastery Free Group. And one of the things we didn't talk about yet is leverage all the money being spent on other things like campaigns. Like, how many times have you seen a TV ad and try to find out while you're sitting there on the couch doing a search to find out more about it, and they don't have crap on a web, or at least it's not ranking
Right.
so that you could find it. That just burns me. Like, yeah, you could spend millions and millions of dollars on campaigns, but you won't spend diddly squat on search. And besides being represented, I think having someone that is responsible overall, like, really want to be customer centric. Can somebody search a product number and get to the product, and on that page get customer service for that product? That doesn't come from search, and search would never waste their time on individual products, because that doesn't have the head volume that
Right.
the people create plans around. Like, that's why I believe that traffic is not a great indicator of success.
Right. It's some sort of performance. And it's interesting in the four, so I said four pillars. Most people think of paid, organic, and site search. At IBM, we had these things called smart ads. That's the fourth pillar we had at IBM. And it goes to your point. One thing that we saw that people were searching for in site search, like one specifically, people were looking for, which is now a Lenovo. They own the laptops and desktops, but like a T20. People would come in and search on a, IBM T20. And when they did that query, now in the context of site search, we didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah.
Did they want to buy one? Now, they didn't search in Google or some other search engine, or even, they went in site search. What we deduced, we created literally a pie chart that said they're either want one of those, they have a problem with one of those, they want parts for one of those. And so what we started to do is put what we called smart ads on site search. And if they did a T20, was literally an ad with 4 links that said the T20 is no longer sold. Do you want to buy a T30? So that was an upsell into the next generation.
Yep.
Do you want parts and accessories for it? Do you want repair? What is it you want? And then we mined that data. We used to sell those spots back to the brand to be there. And that was always interesting. The other thing too, we looked at, and I've got a whole pretty long article on mining site search data. You mentioned codes. Most people know site search is the worst search in the world. So they will search in Google for a part number, an error code. And if you're lucky as a brand, they come to your website, to your, Google reaches down into the bowels of your help environment and it pulls up that thing. Or, anybody else that's had that problem has solved it for you. And it's really interesting when you're mining this and looking at that. Like you said, there's no volume where an SEO will touch that term. But the customer satisfaction, the upsell, the cross sell is insane. Another really cool example, when I was working with Cisco, we did probably the most extensive data mining exercise I've ever done around keywords. And what we found was there was so much monetizable things. Like somebody looking at the a query like a Cisco 8550 BTU. What in God's name is somebody doing that query for?
Right.
And what it is it's an IT person who needs the BTUs on the server they may be buying so they can adjust their cooling, their HVAC in the data center. And so when we brought that back to the sales team and said, yeah, that's a very common question that they ask, then why don't we have that on the product page? And they're like, well, it is. It's in the PDF on the specification
Right. Right.
that's a hyperlink off the product page. That's in a PDF that's stored out in a PDF server somewhere that's got a license plate domain and, that nobody really gives it the time of day. When we brought all that stuff out of the bowels of the data repository and we put it on a page that was like, down, and we talked about this once before, these little Visio diagram pictures
Yeah.
of the server or the schematics of connecting all the associated bits for a piece of hardware. People wanted those.
So I need to describe what you're talking about because I had to ask you the first time you told me about this. But imagine building a diagram. You want icons of different pieces of equipment, and they basically created a library for all of their products so that you could download that and use that in your presentations and I guess it was Visio and
Visio is a Microsoft it's basically like a flowchart builder, and it was literally a plan to build out a data center. And they had it on an A to Z, 1 to 0, I guess, this straight down. It was probably 5,000 printed pages long. And it was a link to pull it up. And we started integrating that into the product, or as they were selling solutions. Not only that, we would have these hardware diagrams where it's like, this is the optimal data center, right? Assuming that that makes my job easier. Let me drag that into my planning software, and it's got all the pictures, and well, maybe I'm not a fan of this particular server, but it's already on the diagram. It's all well laid out. And these were things that when we started looking at the data, it wasn't hundreds of thousands, but collectively across all the product, it was a lot. And we did start noticing that this did start to short circuit or shorten that purchase journey.
yeah,
That we could see people looking for this.
It probably created a search demand eventually, right? Like people started searching for it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because people knew they could find it and that they could get it, and then they would assemble these documents, and then they would put in, for the budget. And so it had nothing to do with, we weren't going to sell anything from it directly. We weren't going to get a ton of traffic from it. But what it did do was make customers happy. It made them find that. And we could show that it was easier to find that and then start to connect people back to, there was ways we could connect, because in some cases they would have basically a login. You're a major customer and you would log in, so we could tie into the single sign-on and know that this was a customer that was looking for this. Then we could update our CRM database. But it was really fascinating when we started to get into some of these other things. And this is exactly what got C-level awareness, because when we built out this final model, we had identified, I think it was close to $300 million worth of missed opportunity. And so when you find that amount of money lying in the cushions of the couch, it gets somebody's attention.
Right. Yeah, when I was a product manager with Siemens, most of the sales were basically via a contractor that were bidding on specifications that were written by a consultant, and I was able to create a 80% design that we could send out within an hour of asking. And how many times they would just take that? They wouldn't even edit it. They would take that and put it in the requirements. And
exactly.
Boom, they have to buy our stuff because it's our requirements, it's our drawings, it's
exactly.
our sizing, it's all that stuff. So yeah. So there's so many things besides these head terms and traffic. And if you're helpful, people think of you first. You're always going to be included in the 3 reviews, and you might even get an advantage even if you're more expensive because you've been helpful.
Right. And I think at the end of the day, what we're saying is, we need to reframe search and digital as a strategic business driver and start to effectively, communicate its value. and tie it back to these big ideas that you're doing, and then find ways, get those nuggets out there, those sound bites. And we've talked about this before. That big major lesson I learned when I was leaving after I sold the agency and I was doing my final meeting with IBM as a client at the time, all these senior executives around the table, almost none of them had seen really any of the search reports that we had done. And it was because they were, being sanitized by junior and mid-level managers. And so what we tried to do, what I took away from that is, and then they're never going to look through, a 40-page deck and, an hour's worth of notes from an executive from a readout. It's never going to do it. So we went back, and my last thing that I did at the agency was saying, look, let's do I think we called it 335 report video. And it's like you do with your short videos all the time, a little nugget about something. We said, let's have one or two things, at most three that worked, or some outstanding stat. Hey, we had a 77% increase in people looking for blue widgets. And hey, you know what? We tried this and it really didn't work. So, it's like, but this is three things we learned from it, that we should do X, Y, and Z. And if you can do that in a short thing, really making, we want them to be sort of cocktail party factoids and get that out to people. We started noticing in meetings after we started, they noticed it, that more senior people were parroting these facts.
Yeah.
Because they were consumable.
Yeah.
Right.
They want to take credit
little
for it.
Things.
And
they want to take credit for it.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's the last nugget, Bill, is you nailed it. That, remember, I've been trying to write this article forever. The CEOs of both Wayfair and Panera, I think they were on some business news thing being interviewed, and or maybe they were in some company-wide meeting, and they both were really pissed that the average employee, like the frontline person, had no concept of or cared about shareholder value. Both of them said this, like, you guys just don't care about this. And if you think about what their job is, they are indirectly so far removed from that concept. They probably don't even know what it is. Their job is to ring the cash register, to answer a phone, do whatever. Yeah. But that contributes to their boss, the manager's KPIs, that manager's KPIs, the regional manager's KPIs, the North American manager's KPIs. And so I think, but we never enable people to understand how everything is connected going back up the food chain. And so I think if you take that moment and you think about it, okay, how am what I'm doing contributing to my boss's KPIs, but also how might I be contributing to this person's KPIs?
Yeah.
And if we can just put that out there in the world, I think that's going to be, hopefully it will get noticed. And I mean, if you're in a massive, massive company and, you're a junior search person, it may never see the light of day. But I think the more you can try to tie it to something that someone else has hung their hat on, how you contributed to it, that's going to help you get more awareness.
Yeah. I've always tried to think about how to make my boss look good. So that's a great first step. Cool. I think that was enough. Any closing comments before we wrap up?
No, just, think about how you're showing the love and value to the company and anything you can do to get that. And just think out of the box. And welcome you to let us know anything you've done to get senior level exposure or ideas you have. Hit us up on the Facebook group. And if you want us to go down this rat hole a little bit more, on how we can gain awareness, again, let us know there. That's where some of these more recent ones have come from, or being inspired by other people's articles. So if you come across an article that you want us to talk about, shoot it over to us and we'll be glad to take the time to dig into it. But watch, share, and like, and let us know how we're doing.
Yeah. If you're looking for us, you can search for International Web Mastery on LinkedIn, Facebook, and X. And while we love doing this stuff, we hope you're finding value in the conversations. We'd really appreciate it if you take the moment to rate and review the podcast. And finally, we have courses, free and paid courses on the site. Actually, I think we have the course, How to Make a Business Case for SEO. Yep. So that's timely now when people are going through their budgeting and trying to secure more budgets. Thanks, Bill. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Yeah, see you next time.
Hey, this is Bill Scully. I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training course called Demystifying hreflang. It includes 6 modules and is over an hour long with a quiz at the end of each module. You can find it at internationalwebmastery.com. Hope to see you there.